Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of What's Next with We. This is a podcast wherein we invite experts across industries, discuss about the industry, figure out what's happening in the industry, and figure out and explore what's next in that space. Today we have a really interesting guest who have been pestering over a month to get him on the podcast. Mr. Anas Rahman Juanid, the founder at Hurun India and Callapina Capital. Very interesting story. And I thought this could inspire uh, the listeners out there. So, Anas, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Vishal. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. As usual, I'm Vishal Ramaswamy, the V in What's Next with We. Won't take much time jumping right in. Anas, your story has been quite unique, conventional at the same time.
Right.
Uh, you have obviously did your engineering, did your MBA, started as a software engineer, then moved into investments while building Hurun India, right? I'm sure many of the folks would have heard about Hurun India, but would be great to hear from you on your story to date.
See, I think the day when I joined my engineering college, right? The day when I joined, I realized that that was not the place for me, right? Yeah, it was. I was literally in a maze with. I don't know what I was doing there really, right? From an engineering perspective, I had, of course, I had. So I was mainly focused on college arts and dance, and as part of the college dance team, college dramatics, all those kind of stuff. In a college in Kerala called the Model Engineering College, which is very known for very studious bunch of people, right? So it's highly tech. And all my classmates are working in Microsoft and all those places all over the world, those kind of companies, right? It's really highly tech-oriented college. But made a lot of good friends and everything. That was that. Um, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur right from when I was young. I don't know why it was. My family is full of professionals. My dad is a doctor. My grandfather was a lawyer. My mom's grandmother was an entrepreneur, but then he passed away way before I got in the census, right? So, but then I always wanted to test, always wanted to see uh, how you can use your skills to the best possible extent to create wealth or see how we can add. That always had that in mind, and I still remember when I was about 16, 17 years old. So that time, this video cassette thing was a big thing, right? So there was this thing where you can collect all the video cassette, you give it on rent and all that stuff, right? So I saw this thing. I remember talking to my grandfather saying, I want to do something, I want to sell these video cassettes and see if I can make some money. Then he said, no, 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 it's not fit for our family's pride and all that stuff. You can't get into all these things. So that was a kind of environment I grew up in, typical well-to-do middle-class family, professional, sort of taken care of and all that stuff. Then got into engineering. Again, like in Kerala, during my time, it is that you have everything that your plus your mentors and close friends know, you either become an engineer or become a doctor,
True.
right? So then we followed that path. My dad is a doctor, so my dad's friends told me that you should never be a doctor because you lose about 10-15 years of life studying. So I got brainwashed away from being a doctor. Then I became a and I thought about becoming an engineer. Then I brought the entrance and got into computer science engineering. That is how my engineering thing started. But always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but did not know. So nobody was there to really advise me or mentor me, and there's nobody who I could really go to take some get some advice saying, "Hey, you just go take some risk right now. It's the right age." Now,
True.
during my times, and all people say, "Oh, this is the age when you have to study, work really hard, and all that stuff," right? But now, when I advise people, when people they're 20 years old, 25, they come and ask me for advice. And if you want to take risk, this is the time to take risk. Go take risk. You
Exactly.
can fail. Your cost of mistakes are going to be minimal. Do whatever you want to
True.
do. There's no one to advise me like that, and that is a reflection of the culture of India at that point in time, in terms of where the entrepreneurship and where
True.
wealth creation was not considered mainstream and all that stuff, right? That was one big thing. Then engineering happened. Immediately after I joined Accenture as a software engineer, but immediately after about a year, I quit and moved to KPMG as a consultant, and that was a great place where I learned a lot of stuff. I mean, great set of people. I mean, still now I keep in touch with them, all my colleagues and partners and all those guys. They're the second level of learning is what I got from KPMG. Again, I wanted to do entrepreneurship. Uh, and but then I used to sell. I was quite good at sales even when I was at KPMG. My role was not expected for selling, but I used to sell even when I was young. So I knew that I got the sales skill, and I can convey value to a potential customer. I mean, that's part of my core skill set that I've realized. Then I got into Oxford Side Business School. Great experience. I mean, for me, just to give you a perspective, you would have known. I mean, you can guess the background that I come from. So I'm not really like a knowledgeable sort of person, right? So I joined KPMG. So went to Oxford thinking, oh, by the way, consulting, maybe I can move to strategy consulting. Maybe I can start a consulting firm at some point in time. That was the kind of thought process I had in my mind. I went to Oxford uh, first. After within the first, I remember I was called for an interview because I had a good background in terms of typically the kind of applicants who applied for B schools in that point in time during my time to 2011, 12 was you had software engineers who applied for MBAs, right? But my background, I went to software, I took a career shift, did this consulting, so KPMG, so all that because of I used to get a lot of uh, interview calls. Interview calls from a lot of. I remember I had an interview with Citibank. Just to give you the irony of what has happened in life, right? So I remember I was being interviewed by Citibank, and my second month of the college, and they wanted to get somebody for summer internship and then possibly get into a full time, the investment banking division. And the question they asked were, what are the three types of valuation methodologies, right? So I didn't have a clue. The second month, right? And I don't come from a finance background at all. And the irony is, I value about 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 companies every year now. So compared to that time, I never, of course, I don't get the internship. And then this. And I still remember another interview. This also, just to tell you the irony of what life has in store, right? I had an interview with British Telecom. So first month of joining, right? And so my profile is good. I get called for interviews, right? The first month, the first interview, and the question was, they gave me a case study. And the case study, the figures were in millions and billions, right? And I'm from India. I know only lakhs and crores, right? So I didn't have a clue of what millions and billions were. I literally during the interview asked him, can you tell me how many zeros there are in millions and billions, right? So from there now I create these billionaires list and all that stuff. That's the like so. It is kind of ironical what happened now when you connect this back. It's quite sometimes life is a big comedy, as somebody said. So it's actually quite interesting from that perspective. Uh, so got into Oxford, quite exciting. As challenging, as crazy as I am, I used to take all the difficult papers just to get more knowledge. And that's one thing I want to tell everyone is that try to get knowledge as much as possible. So I still remember I used to take fixed income derivatives, having full conviction that I might not get good marks there and all that. So, but I really want to know what it was about. I was very zealous about all these things, enthusiastic and know what kind of thing it was, right? So then Oxford happened. Then I went to just to give you some background. I had a couple of offers, but I decided I'll go for a job with a family office because I really wanted to. Uh, I really wanted to. I really loved the concept. I discovered the whole PE venture capital valuation, the world after joining Oxford. That's when I understood such a thing exists, and I really have determined that if I have to do something, I have to be in that area, right? Then I got a job offers and with my previous consulting organization, which I didn't take. Then I remember I got an internship with a family office, and I thought that's a great thing. And but you can imagine in London, you getting an internship with a family office, but there I had no pay, So, so what was told to me was that you have no pay. Then I told him, okay, I only want two things. First, you cover my expenses at least. Secondly, I want to attend, since you are a family office, which means you get free ticket to all the investor conferences hosted by Financial Times. So I want to go to all the Financial Times conferences. So I got that. So that gave me a lot of advantage to network and gain knowledge and what's happening in the market. Gave me a further
Nice.
knowledge. Then I moved to a company called Probitus Partners within the private equity placement. That's when I met Rupert. I did the first global rich list for him through a gentleman called Sundra, who introduced me to Rupert, and he said, "Oh, there's this guy from Oxford again, who's creating this amazing rich list concept and everything, and he's launched it successfully in Asia, starting with China, and you should meet him." I don't know, rich list. Yeah, let's go meet him and see what it is about. And I met Rupert, and I genuinely like the gentleman, and I really liked working the whole thing. And when I started, I remember the first global rich list was a list of top 100 richest people in the world. So as I was doing the top 100 richest people in the world, I mean, the whole the thought process, the entire exercise gave me an idea. Oh, this is really cool. I get to learn about what's going on in the world, who are the biggest movers and shakers. I can really what I have been lacking since my childhood was inspiration and a mentorship from my family or my friends in terms of being an entrepreneur. I never had that, and it's I never had that. Whatever reason it is, and this gives you an opportunity to give me an overdose of mentorship and inspiration on a daily
True.
basis. That was quite an exciting thing for me when it came to Hurun. I did the project and became very successful. I actually worked as an intern for Rupert at that point in time. Then I got a job with the Financial Service Authority, which is a UK's regulator, very chilled out job and all that stuff. But then Rupert yeah, and Rupert basically told me, why don't you come and work for me in India, build it for me. I told him, look, if it is about working, I'm really comfortable where I am. And it's really a 9 to 5 job, chilling, great pay. And my wife and I were recently married, and we were in London. So it was like a good experience for her as well and everything.
True.
If I have to do a take up something, it has to be something deeper and meaningful. That's when I told Rupert that, if I was to do something in Hurun, I have to co-found Hurun India and build it as my company. Anyway, nobody knew about Hurun at that point, 11 years back. Nobody knew about it. I could have started Marshmallow Rich List. Nobody would have cared, right? But I started the co-founded Hurun in 2012 and started doing research. And that was a whole background. And specific reasons why I decided to take the jump. One is of course I like Rupert. I like him, and I really think it'd be cool to build something in India, taking inspiration from him. But secondly, I also told Rupert that no, India is a very different market. It cannot go like the rest of the world and all. And I'm a complete outsider too, right? I'm not from media, right? I'm not from media. I'm not from so I'm literally putting out something which is and talking to the something that comes out in media, but absolutely no media background. So that's quite a tricky thing there. But what I like, that's the most important thing, right? What I really wanted to do was I had this map from the economists. Everybody speaks about this. India had some 20% global GDP share some 200 years back and all that stuff. So that chart was actually 10, 15 years old, right? That economist chart. I know I had that copy of Economist which had that chart, right? And it basically says that China and India basically ruled the global GDP about 40%
True.
before colonialism, and then the colonization, all that happened, and it came down 2%. And through the Hurun China rich list, I realized that how much the China is catching up, and coming back. And I really thought 2012, that time I thought, okay, this could be potentially a time when I can start tracking about India growth story and speak about the story of Indian economy through the eyes of the entrepreneurs. That was the whole thought process that I had. And I thought, what if I have the opportunity to take a photo every year of the India rich list. And then 12 years back, look at these photographs. This is how India has grown. I mean, that was the thought process. I don't have anything. I didn't think about revenue models. I did not think about how I'm going to make money. Anything. Just that mission that I had, and I thought I'll start and see where it all shapes up. And that was the beginning. And from there, then I started connecting. That's a long story. Maybe I can respond to your next set of questions. But that's how it all started, really. Then I quit my job in London. Quite a difficult decision, because
Yeah,
newly
true.
married. You move to London. You and a wife are just experiencing the UK with an employment and all that stuff. So that was quite an exciting, but quitting the job, coming back was quite a shock for the entire family and friends and everyone. What the hell are you doing, man? You can't just come back. But I'm a quite honestly, I always say this, right? I'm a very, very deeply rooted Indian. I really am super patriotic. I just want to come back to India and create something there, build the nation, create employment. I've always been driven by that, right? So that's but we both, my wife was so kind and she agreed to be, and finally we both quit and came back from the UK and set up Hurun in India. That was the whole genesis, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
An awesome story, Anas. I think many of them could relate. I think in your early 20s, you dabbled with multiple things from software engineering to consulting, and then obviously then through your MBA, you kind of it got opened up to the PVC world and obviously the entrepreneurship world. So,
Yeah.
Anas, I think since you have seen both sides, right, from being working at a large company to seeing, I mean, understanding PVC world, and now at in 2012 when you built Hurun India, you also had your founding journey in some way or the other. So, with your experience at Hurun, I just wanted to maybe get some highlights, some interesting stories that you've gone through in the past 10, 11 years at Hurun. Maybe segregating between the traditional businesses
Yeah.
and the new age entrepreneurs or the startup entrepreneurs that you would have interacted with. So some key highlights, interesting stories in these two space. How are they
Yeah.
interrelated? Are they interrelated? Can they coexist? Can both the businesses in India coexist and create wealth for the nation? So it would be good to hear your take on these
Yeah,
two
of course.
segments.
I think, in terms of my corporate journey to, see, one point I want to tell everyone is that when I joined Accenture, I was so excited the first day, getting into such big building and all that stuff, right? But then a few 2 weeks later, it hit me really hard. I'm coming here. I'm possibly one of the 5,000 employees there. What is the kind of impact that I'm making in a company like that, right? Uh, so yeah, so it's about I don't know. Different people have different perspectives, right? Some people, for them that's good enough, so that's great. But someone like me, it's all about how do you fully utilize your potential, soft skills and hard skills and all that stuff, right? And then try to get the
True.
best out. So it doesn't really work for me, being in a place like that. It doesn't work for me. It has to be, I don't know, my full potential can be utilized in a place like that. And that's how all the decisions in my life has been taken. It's about which place, position, country, time, age, what gives me the best potential to use my abilities to the fullest of extent, uh, to create a positive change. That's the whole idea. Just to narrate I think Hurun has a main lot of stories, but then just to answer specifically to your question, one of the fortunate uh, thing that I've seen is that is basically all these entrepreneurs. They're all very, very focused. I don't really see a much of a difference between the new age startups and the traditional family businesses. They're all super energetic, very well read, very well thought. They're all super focused. You know, of course, one difference potentially that I see between the traditional family houses and the new age business, because the new age startup founders, since they've been building the companies, and they've got a lot of support from the ecosystem and so on, they're
True.
probably more exposed to the startup ecosystem, and hence they invest a lot of money back and all that stuff. into startup. But then that is somewhere the some catch up that needs to be done from a traditional business perspective. But hey, if you look at the whole market dynamics now, right? Everybody's talking about profitability and how do you make profitable unit economics and all that stuff, right? That's the beauty of traditional business. They've always been on how to make a sustainable, profitable business. They did not think about anything else, right? So there's a lot of things to be learned from both sides. You know, how are they building profitable, sustainable business? How are the new age startups identifying new opportunities? Because from a traditional business perspective, let's say something like a OpenAI, ChatGPT, something like that's come out, right? If the traditional family office is not glued into what's happening from a tech perspective, they would definitely lose significant competitive advantage. So it's high time that so that's why we through our forums try to get all these guys come together in one forum and discuss and exchange ideas. And I also make introductions between my friends, and they sometimes meet each other and exchange ideas and so on.
What you're doing at Hurun, right? You're cross-pollinating ideas between traditional businesses and new age startups. And I think you picked up one interesting point on profitability and sustainable businesses, right? I think that the traditional Indian businesses have done really well. I think that startups now in this present kind of funding winter, as they say, I think it's a good time for these startups to learn that really core, at the same time, basic business skill, right? Creating a sustainable, profitable business. And other point that you had mentioned is on technology. I think the new age startups had that headway because they were technology first or cloud first, as they say, right? So they could innovate at much faster pace. But seeing that, I think traditional businesses have learned, and you see most of these traditional businesses employing technology at scale across. So I think the cross pollination of ideas will benefit both the industries, is how I look at it.
But just to add to one point, this funding winter, you can't completely blame on startups as well, right? End of the day, the startups are chasing the valuation metrics that have been set by the investors.
True.
Right? It's not like startups have no thrill in going bleeding and then chasing growth. Why are they chasing growth? Because some investor like Tiger or whoever would have come back and said, "Oh, by the way, we need you to grow M&M. Forget profitability for now. Just keep on growing." And that's what we're looking at. That's why they chase the metrics. It's not like they're not intentionally. So I don't think the funding winter and the lack of funding in startups, this wealth depletion, whatever they talk about, right? It cannot be attributed only to the founders of the startups. I think investors have a equal role, if not more role to play. That is what we're trying to change through our Callapina Capital Fund as well. I think we can speak about it later.
Anas, obviously you've been at Hurun, you've been tracking entrepreneurs, first gen entrepreneurs, second gen, obviously large industrialists, and everybody's talking that India is the next big thing. I think past few years we're hearing that kind of stable government, decent policies, and we're seeing everybody talk about India, right? And with our G20 presidentship this year, we're seeing a lot of interest from foreign countries. Since you've been tracking that over the years, just wanted to ask you certain trends, certain sectors that you see big sector being grown in India. So just want to understand trend sectors that are going to get big in India.
I think India will be firing on all cylinders for sure. Even from a so for example, very simple things like, for example, real estate sector. They should take that, right? We have a huge unmet housing demands, right? And which means that over the 10-year period, real estate sector is going to do well, right? Take any sector, chemicals, pharma. We're almost the pharma capital of the world. Our income levels are rising, which means that consumer spending is going to go up. So consumer companies, luxury spending is going to go up. EV, next important thing is what are the kind of opportunities that will so far the startups have been solving for the top 100 million problems for the top 100 million. Now more and more startups are going to solve for the bottom 800 million, right?
Yeah, the Bharat.
But then that is not just limited to them buying, but also the issues that impact the bottom 800, which could be sustainability and climate. It impacts the entire country. So the climate tech is going to play a role. Of course, the bottom 800 is not going to pay money, or I'm not saying that, but that issue impacts them, right? Electric, EV, right? no, not everybody is going to buy an EV vehicle, but the whole EV adoption is going to impact the entire country, right? So the opportunities like that is going to be very, very exciting. And when we are investing, also we are looking at such opportunities. Uh, and I really think that it's going to be exciting in India because we are very untapped, and we don't really have to uh, uh, follow the Western model of trying to copy a certain opportunity that worked there and which could work here
True.
in, let's say, in an e-commerce perspective and all that. So there's a lot of other opportunities that can be done, right? Space tech is literally untouched from an Indian context. That's a
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
virgin. Just a few companies are. If you look at India, has got a lot of opportunities everywhere, and also India is a very thanks to, I think we should give a lot of credit to Prime Minister Modi as well, in the sense that we are our image as a soft power has definitely grown. You know, though nobody can, you can criticize him, you can say things against him and all that stuff, but Prime Minister Modi has done a very, very strong thing by helping India's image as a soft power go up. And also look at the top CEOs of the rest of the world, including the Prime Minister of the UK. You know, the most a lot of the companies of Indian origin CEOs. Of course,
True.
people might come back and say, "Oh, they're not Indians; they're Americans." But at the end of the day, there is an Indian root attached to it,
True.
and uh, and so I think India's uh, possibly at the very, very bright spot when it comes to uh, taking the, even moving the world's GDP forward in the next 10, 15
Exactly.
years.
Yeah. That was
So lot,
my, yeah.
yeah, and a lot of policies are really up. So just to give you I think Mr. Gadkari, I think we put about, I don't know, 13 kilometers road per day, or 40 kilometers, I don't know. Apparently world record in terms of making
True.
the
Yeah.
road, right? And road
Correct.
means more transportation, more connectivity, demand for more vehicles, people having ability to do more trade, increasing more wealth, people can buy more homes. All that has an impact, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah. It's all
so I'm
multiplying
and
effect, right? Once
it
you,
was a very, very heartening when a prime minister of a country comes back and creates a vision for 2047, right? It's
true.
amazing, right? I really wanted to, I always thought about it. But when I was in the UK, the UK always have this vision 2020, vision 2030. I was thinking, okay, the guy who's creating the vision 2020, 2030 or whatever, I think 2005, 6, I was working in KPMG London that time, okay? So 2040, the guy who's making the vision, he might not be even be alive by the time uh, the vision is executed, right? So that's like, creating something for the country and creating hope for the country for all to work for. And Prime Minister, by coming back and saying 2047 may we become a developed nation, is is creating that hope, which is
True.
possibly beyond his lifetime, right? So that's really cool. I really think those kind of things are quite nice for the country. And yeah, India possibly should fire on all cylinders. We are really at a very, very interesting juncture of growth.
No, no, absolutely, Anas, I'm with you on that. That's why I've been tracking the what was happening in the country, and we're seeing a lot of interest from foreign countries. So
Yeah,
once we see that, it's basically a validation that things are pretty well in India and things are in the right direction. And you
yeah,
had also mentioned that multiple sectors will benefit. We are seeing that because with the underlying technology development that is happening in the country, the digital vision of the country, I think multiple sectors will benefit. You
yeah,
mentioned one sector, space tech. Also, I mean, we have been tracking that. Space tech,
yeah.
defense tech, aerospace is not even touched. There's so much
Correct,
scope that where
correct.
India can build it here and kind of give it to the world. So that's how I
Yeah,
think we should look at build in India for the world, because that's how, as you also mentioned, right? India
yeah,
could be benefiting the entire world's GDP. So that's how
yeah.
I look at it, and also quite positive of what's happening in India.
Yeah, just to give you
Uh,
an idea, Vishal, uh, number of billionaires, I think, I don't know, now China has all crashed, but then at least in last year, China's GDP is about 16, 17 trillion. And
Correct.
China has about, I think, 120 plus billionaires from the real estate sector.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. You know how many billionaires India has from real estate sector? Can you make any guess?
10.
10, 11, 12. That's about it, right? Look at the gap. Now, you
True.
should have to understand. if India's GDP, for India's GDP to go from 3 trillion to currently 3 trillion to double by the end of this decade, for that to happen, more number of billion-dollar companies have to come out, right?
True.
And the real estate billionaires would possibly be 30 or 40 by the time it happens, right? So wealth creation is going to play a very, very important role, and it could be from every angle, every sector. It is going to play an important. That's what why we want to be at the forefront of promoting transparent wealth creation and transparent wealth creators. Their stories have to be told, and their stories can
Absolutely.
inspire people, right? So I mean, that's the whole one of the key mission statements of why we exist.
No,
From a Hurun.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And unless if you see Indian culture as well, right, we are typically aspirational. Even you go to Bharat, right, you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, people are aspirational. People have now smartphones, they want to have good cars, live in good places, have good living conditions, want to work in maybe in cities. Even the youngsters really want to now, and we are seeing a trend where they want to build it in India rather than go abroad and uh, do well there. So we're seeing lot of these multiple trends happening, and these are each one kind of a multiplying factor for the country. So
Yeah, but there's just to I totally agree with your point, and I was with my one of my British friends a couple of weeks back in couple of weeks back in South Bombay. So वहाँ पे we were just walking around and we saw these food stalls में जो book stalls है ना, that we were just looking
right,
at the book stalls trying to buy some books and all that stuff. And he was telling me, honestly, it's quite amazing to see most of the books on the bookstall are about entrepreneurship, 0 to 1
exactly,
point, all those kind of books, right? It's
yeah,
all about entrepreneurship and stuff. And he told, Anas, if you come with me to a similar bookstore in the UK, possibly the kind of books that you see at Love Island and all those guys, all those kind of books, right? So to that, to the understand the passion or the current mood of
of the nation, yeah, true,
current mood of the nation or the youth. Just go to the bookstore and see what kind of books are being sold, right? We are not interested in, as a country, we are not interested in wasting time reading through random stuff. We are really
really
interested in how to
focused.
move forward, how to create wealth. And and I don't know, I'm very fortunate to have played a very small role, albeit a small role, in spreading these stories. A brand we estimate gets about 1 to 1.5 billion views a year across all the
Wow.
media and everything put together, right? So a rich list would be read by at least 200, 300 million people when it's launched, right? So we could speak about these things, through our research and possibly inspire at least some people when they read it. I mean, that's what is giving us a lot of kick. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point that to track the mood of the nation, go to the nearest bookstore. That's an
Yeah.
interesting point. And I think now entrepreneurship become like a revolution. It's like
Yeah.
everybody wants to get into it or be part of it some way or the other. I
Yeah.
think kudos goes to the government, obviously state policies, and maybe
Yeah.
another bit is the Shark Tank. Right now, it's become everybody speaks about it. Every home in India now. Grandmoms speak about your valuation and the revenues that you bring in. So I think entire revolution that is happening in country in a good way. I think it'll rub well for India. And a segueing to last couple of questions.
Yeah.
I think you've been tracking the rich folks in India, tracking industries, sectors. Obviously, you might have got a lot of insights of which sector is working, which is not, and all of that. Segueing to my question on your investment journey so far with Callapina Capital, I believe you're doing things a little bit differently from the others. Would like to get your inspiration of creating a fund and your thesis and methodology of investing.
Yeah, thanks. So for this, I have to really mention my partner Vinod Jose's name. We were being childhood friends, for the last 25 years. I mean, we've always been talking about investments. I think um, when I started off Foreign Report, when I had no revenue, I used to do a consulting gig in between, a bit of an investment bank as well. So wherein I got a couple of interesting companies for Vinod, which Vinod invested in, and he got good exits in both these companies,
Wow,
right? But
awesome.
that time I had not I have the conviction of investing in startups. And I'm like, I'm making all the introductions that people are making money. They should also start investing. So, and jokes apart, I think the whole idea, two things really triggered for me to get into startup. The one is So basically trying basically we do all these rich list and the startup list and all that stuff. And we're not a journalist, we're not a media house, because we don't have our retail stand publication and all that stuff. We do our research and we give our content to everyone to publish, right? So that way it have a much wider reach. But I really thought, if I have to really make an impact and inspire more and more people into investing in startups, I should possibly start investing myself,
True.
right? I should have a skin in the game. And that's how, so because of that, I've been wanting to invest. I started making a few investments here and there. Then COVID hit in 2020, right? So that time, so we have two businesses, events. We have an active events business as well. So events is completely washed out, right? So we don't know. So I had to find alternative source of making money. How do I make money? It's we have to live, right? So then I started trading actively in stock markets. The volatility was very good for me to play around with. During the COVID, the initial 6, 7, 8 months is quite good. I knew that someone like Mukesh Ambani, whose share price, Reliance ka share price come down to 850, it is not going to stay there forever, because Mr. Ambani, and he'll
True.
get back. Uh, so basically, made some money in stock market. Luckily, I was very lucky, and I made some good investment decisions then. So I made some good corpus. Then with that, I started actively investing in startups again. So aggressively started investing in startups, right?
Very good.
I got a couple of early exits as well. Then I found it quite exciting. When I started investing, I started talking about these stories of investments with my friends in the Rich List network and their next generation. Some really good friends I have, and some of them have started co-investing with me. Of course, I'm not an agent, I'm not an investment banker. I just go tell them the story. Looks great. When do you come and co? They started co-investing with me. So those kind of journeys, right? I mean, that's actually quite exciting for me. Uh, People are actually starting to invest because of the work that you do and the kind of messaging that you want to convey. So that is this biggest source of inspiration. We started, this in angel investment. So after doing it for a couple of years, me and Vinod were discussing. We always wanted to do a fund, right? But when to get started, we don't know when to get started. And one day we decided, okay, we're going to start Callapina Capital and see how it goes. And we wanted to what we wanted to do was we're trying our best not to be a spray and pray fund, which is basically you have about it's a small fund, it's about a 35-38 crores fund. We don't want to like invest 1 crore in every company, invest in the 38-40 companies. We want to do a lot of research and understand the founders, spend some time with them, and invest in about 15 companies, 10 to 15 companies, with that corpus, so that we get a much better say, and we put a lot of work in terms of understanding these businesses. So that's one big difference. We don't do a spray and pray. We limit our investments to 15-20 companies, and focus on those businesses, right? We've already invested in our first company, looking at signed term sheets for 2, evaluating 1 more. So with this quarter, since January, we would by the end of March, we would have invested in 4 startups. Average
Awesome.
ticket size of 200,000 US each, right? Almost $1 million would have gone to these startups. So that's the thesis, and we want to continue and take this approach as we grow. Hopefully, God willing, if we grow as well, the next 10-15 years, our bigger, grander dream kind of vision is to become a 3G capital for India, become like a private equity house, because we come with a very unique set of experience. I come with my learning and understanding about growing businesses in India through the Hurun work that I do. Vinod comes with a strategy consulting and investing experience. And we really believe that we have a good network of people who can join us later. We really believe we have a potential to create a PE outfit which can take an active position in the business and also help and handhold in companies grow. So that's the sort of vision that we have, and we're trying to test that through the startups that we do by handholding them, helping them, mentoring them wherever we can, and then slowly build like a PE house. So that's the sort of grander, bigger dream that we have, so to speak.
Awesome, Anas. Actually, you answered my next question. So, the theme of my podcast being what's next,
Yeah,
and good that you laid out the vision of Callapina Capital. I think, as you mentioned, Anas, you have all the right ingredients, right? You have the network of people, successful people, you have the money as well. And in the end of the day, you have the network of startups where you can analyze and invest.
right.
I think your vision of PE fund, we still don't have a large PE fund in India. I think that vision is awesome and uh, would be aspirational for a lot of these new age funds, because you see a lot of VC funds now cropping up, and if even
Yeah,
if one or two become the large PE house in India, it benefits the entire
correct,
country.
correct.
So Anas, I think my last question I'll still ask. So since it's my theme of my podcast, what's next? Obviously, you answered about the Calapina bit. Just wanted
Yeah,
to understand what's next for Hurun India. I think you've been doing it for over 11, 12 years now,
yeah.
tracking the rich folks, rich industrialists, startup entrepreneurs in the country. Wanted to understand what's next for Hurun India.
Okay. So Hurun, so we put about 10 to 15 research reports. If you look at Hurun, so we do rich list, we do 500, lot of these lists, right? Just to visualize the whole thing, right? What we want to be known over the next 10 years is basically to be that research evangelist who tracks entrepreneurs from cradle to their old age, right? For example, they just start, we want to launch our own U30 list, which is a list of top 200 entrepreneurs under the age of 30. Then that'd be the first sign of thing. Then we move to, we have a future unicorn report, which is basically the list of companies, so cheetahs and gazelles who could potentially become a unicorn in the next few years. Then we have the unicorn, that's like the next step. And after you become a unicorn, then you become part of India 500, which is a list of India's most valuable 500 companies. Then you get into India Rich List, which is when you create wealth for yourself and all that stuff. Then after you create the India Rich List, then you have the potential to be a part of the Hurun Global Rich List. That's a list of richest people in the world. Then next step is when you be a part of the Hurun Global 500, which is the list of most valuable 500 enterprises in the world, right? So U30 to Global 500. That's like the journey of a entrepreneur right from when he's young to when he builds a really global business. And we want to be tracking that and saying that story. And at the end, uh, for the responsibility through the philanthropy perspective, right? When you start donating, that's after you create wealth. So that's what we want to be tracking over the next 10 years. And really, and one very important, thing that we really want to do is, spread the message and convey to everyone is that we are not really about talking about flaunting the billionaires. No, that's not our job. That's not what we are about, right? Sometimes people think Horan is rich and billionaires and all that stuff. Of course, we are more interested in the process of creating that wealth. We not so
True.
much care about the final number. That process is what is really exciting us, and we really are more excited about speaking about that the journey. So because of which we'll be having a lot of focus on events in the next 10 years. We'll possibly do 50, 60, 70 events across the country, spreading these stories, spreading the messages, letting everyone know about what's going on through the various lists that we do. I mean, that's the sort of vision that we have. And also, we are also going to play a global role in the sense that Horan is in 10 countries already. So we possibly be expanded to about 30, 40 countries. So I'm going to be playing a role there, and my team is going to be playing a
Wow,
role there
awesome.
as well. So that is the sort of a bigger sort of picture for Hurun. But like I said, Hurun and the Calapina is like both are inevitable, and we really want to build that fund, and possibly, and one another angle to Hurun is also all this knowledge, research, data that we have. No, of course, not the confidential data, but then all this
Yeah, obviously.
publicly available data that we've been collating and tracking. If there's an opportunity to give that to everyone on a subscription basis for them to come and read about it to universities, I mean, that'll be a great thing to do. So these are sort of the things that is running through my mind. So we just bought a new office and inaugurated it yesterday, right?
Wow,
So yeah, so we have two offices, Mumbai and Cochin, two offices in India now.
awesome.
Yeah, so that's the sort of vision that we have for Hood in India.
Great, Anas. I think more powers to you and the team. I think you're doing some incredible work. Keep sharing, keep inspiring, keep sharing the stories to as many number of people in the country. I think once we start reading such stories across the country, you'll find entrepreneurs coming from all over the country, right?
Yeah.
So on that note, Anas, thanks a lot for taking our time on a Sunday, sharing your inspirational story. I'm sure listeners out there would be, I'm sure, waiting for this episode to come out. So, Anas, once again, thanks. Thanks for spending time with us.
And thank you, Vishal, and wish you all the best on your podcast and keep up the positivity. I just want to tell one story before I leave. When I was pitching, when I was doing a sales pitch to a company about Hurun, I remember I told him, I'm from Hurun. He said, "How do I even pronounce your name? Hurun. How do you do it?" Now, literally, it was ridiculed in that sales pitch, right? So what I'm saying is everything. This is about 10 years back now. So what I'm saying is, everything that you do, right? It has a when you start something, of course, people, it's always difficult, but then keep at it, keep the
True.
positivity.
Yeah,
Things
absolutely.
will fall in place. Now, I say in my office wall, I've written it on the wall of the office. If you have to be successful, this is one criteria that I've seen with most of the entrepreneurs as well. If you have to be successful, you have to work hard, work smart, and be a good human. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Absolutely, Anas. So with my podcast, I mean, my same, it's kind of similar to your Hurun story. I would like to share stories of folks like
Yeah.
you. I think end of the day, people want to hear inspirational stories, aspirational stories, which benefits everyone in the society. So that's
Yeah.
my vision as well on my podcast. Hence, I invited you, and I found that your story pretty interesting, though you don't consider the same. But I feel your story is conventional, yet at the same time super unique. On that
Yeah.
note, Anas, once again, thanks for being part of What's Next with We. Hope to stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care, man. Cheers.